In this video, we are going to be home cooking enchiladas. I'm going to show you guys how I make sourdough tortillas. We're going to do a brief garden walk, and I'm going to share a parenting secret that I've learned over the years of parenting 6 children that I really wish I would have known from the very start 19 years ago about helping kids follow directions. Welcome back if you're returning, and welcome if you are new here. This channel is all things faith and home, from homemaking, homesteading to home education. If you enjoy this content, please like this video, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. Whenever I make up enchiladas, I like to make up a large batch of enchiladas. I usually do chicken and beef. I have a super simple method for the spices that you can use and convert no matter the quantity you're making. If you are using a traditional mix like a taco mix, just follow the directions on that and then add whatever extra seasonings that you would like garlic, lime, whatever. But if you are doing things purely from scratch, the ratio is a teaspoon of salt per pound of meat. A trick I have though is to season lightly when you are cooking the meat, and once it is cooked, while you're mixing it with your cheeses and other ingredients, that's when to taste test and adjust the seasoning to your family's taste. Normally I would use thawed meat, and the chicken is thawed, but this hamburger is not. It'll work just fine for this recipe. Whenever you add all these seasonings, the meat always turns out pretty forgiving. Cook the meat until it is done. For chicken, however, you can undercook it slightly since you will be cooking them again later. I don't recommend doing that with the beef though. It is a good idea to stir up the meat a few times as it's cooking. Over here, the hamburger meat has thawed out, so I'm going to take it out and start to break it up. Never toss this lovely, luxurious broth. You want it. You want it for cheese sauce later. You'll also want some to use in the meat to add some moisture to it once you get it all shredded. Or if you want, you could use it to make a mole sauce for your enchiladas. You can buy tortillas or you can make them. I decided I'm going to make them because I want sourdough tortillas since they're easier to digest. My recipe is 1 cup of active sourdough starter, 1 cup of warm water, 2 teaspoons of salt, half of a cup of butter, lard, palm fruit shortening or oil, and approximately 3.5 cups of flour, which you can give or take depending on the brand of flour you're using and type of flour. Let your dough rise in the fridge for approximately 24 hours. The next day, take it out and you can cut it into your sections. I learned a new trick for making rolls and tortillas. I got this idea from another channel that I enjoy watching, and maybe you guys have seen this before, but it's where you take your little section of dough and you put it on the board and you put your hand over it like this. Make sure your hand's floured, and you slowly just kind of go in a circular motion and then tuck your fingers in like this, and it makes the perfect little dough ball. Tortillas are a very time-consuming project. We like to do this as a family because it makes what would have been maybe a half a day's work only take maybe an hour. The kids don't seem to mind helping out with this too much, and that's probably because homemade tortillas are just so much better than anything you can buy in the store. There are usually a lot of laughs and giggles, maybe a little bit of irritation from a kid here or there as they can't get their tortilla to roll properly. And then I or an older sibling will step in to rescue their tortilla. If you watch a lot of my videos, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I really can't emphasize this enough. Invite your children in, and you might have to use some prodding, as in you might just say, hey kids, come on, let's do some cooking together. By cooking with your children, not only are you teaching them a lifelong skill, but you are creating an opportunity to spend some quality time with them and make memories that will last a lifetime. Cooking with your children is one of the easiest ways to do these things. I had a really big thank you, Lord moment this week. My sourdough, I don't know how, but somehow it was contaminated and it went bad. I went to feed it one morning and I noticed it was really dark because it was early morning. I've been getting up at like 4 in the morning. So I went to feed it and I couldn't tell for sure, but it looked like maybe it had like a pink on the top. But again, it was dark, so I wasn't sure. Well, I think it did because it didn't smell right after I fed it. It had a weird, I don't know, it's hard to describe the smell. But it did not smell right. It wouldn't do its rising like normal. I realized it had been contaminated. I've had this happen before, probably 2 years ago. It was a bit of a panic because I have company coming. We use this every day and I didn't have time to build up another one, and I knew that we'd probably be spending $200 in bread if I had to go buy it at the store. That's just for 1 week. I don't even know why I did it. I never do this. It must be a God thing because I had, for some reason, had a little bit of extra dough left over from before it was contaminated, and I put it into a pint jar. So I had literally 1 cup of sourdough in the refrigerator that I was gonna just use up for something else because it wasn't with the big batch of sourdough. And I don't even know why I did it or why I had separated just a little bit off to itself in the refrigerator. So anyways, I pulled that out. I was able to revive it in like a day. It hadn't been fed in probably 3 weeks. I was able to get it revived though, thankfully. That's what I made these with. I'm just praising God because I needed that sourdough. To cook your tortillas, you want to cook them on a pretty high heat, but you don't want to scorch them. So it's kind of a medium high heat. If you scorch one, the taste is quite terrible. So I feel like it ruins the whole tortilla if it gets scorched. So one way I avoid scorching is I will flip them multiple times. Whenever you see them bubble up like this, that's always a good thing. So I flipped these once. I'm going to wait just a few minutes, a few seconds actually, and then I'm going to flip them again. This is how I keep them from scorching. I'm going to prepare the meat fillings now. I am going to do a chicken one and a cheese one. So I like to chunk up the chicken for these. Shredded you could do, but I like to chunk it up and then shred it in my KitchenAid. That is an extra step though, and you do not have to do it, especially if you chunk this up pretty finely. My meats here are finished and I didn't feel like they were flavored quite enough, so I'm going to add some cumin, some chili powder, and some taco seasoning to taste. For the cheese, you can add any kind of cheese almost that you want. I wouldn't do Swiss maybe, but cheddar, mozzarella. You could use cotija or queso fresco that you can find at most Walmarts. Since I have gallons and gallons of goat milk from our goats to use up, I'm going to make my own chèvre. It's going to melt really similar to a queso fresco. It's very easy to make. If you would like to know how I make my goat milk chèvre, which you can make with any milk, watch my tamales video. I share the recipe in that video. I'll link to it below in the description. Got some lime juice here. First we need to salt this. I need, did you want to do it?
I want to do one.
Okay, you can do this one, I think. I won't spill that one. This one might get spilled. So you can go. Who wants the taste test? Tell me if I got the seasonings just right. The kids are going to assemble the enchiladas while I go milk the goats. One of the things that takes my enchiladas over the top is this creamy cheese sauce. It is so easy to make and so delicious. You could do a mole, which would be equally as delicious, but here's how to make the cheese sauce. This is a half a cup of butter, half a cup of flour. I happen to use gluten-free here. And then I've got a half a gallon of milk over here. I melted a half a cup of butter. I added flour. I'm gonna cook it for about a minute. If it gets brown, it's not gonna let the roux get quite as thick. So we don't wanna let this flour get brown. We wanna cook it though, so that it is in fact cooked. Okay, my milk is boiling. As the milk starts to get heated up and close to boiling, it will scorch if you don't keep it moving. And now this is bubbling, so we're gonna cook it for about a minute. So this is a much faster method. A lot of roux sauces, you have to stand at the stove for a really long time to make them. This one, you don't have to. The only thing that takes a little bit of time and consideration is just making sure your milk doesn't scorch or stick. Okay, this is ready now. I'm gonna turn it off. And this next part's gonna have to go really fast. So the milk is heated up. I added a teaspoon of salt to the milk. I'm gonna take this butter, flour, and we're gonna have to quickly whisk it into the milk. The milk just started boiling. Okay, it's already getting really thick. I should have used my larger whisk because it's hot. Oh, there we go. Okay, it's done. This is done. Now this is thinner. You can add more roux, like you can make 3/4 of a cup butter and 3/4 of a cup flour and make it thicker. We're not doing that because this is a cheese sauce. I'm gonna be adding some cheddar cheese in a minute. And once I add that cheddar cheese, it's gonna thicken this up a lot. Okay, so this is my super fast roux method. I call this Big Family Mama Got Better Things to Do Than Stand at the Stove for 30 minutes making roux. I'm like squatting right now. This is like a really good workout. Anyways, if I add the cheese right now, this sauce would curdle. It's way too hot. We need to let the sauce cool down considerably before we add our cheddar cheese. Something I forgot to mention is how much cheese to add to the meat sauce. I like to add maybe 1/3 cheese. So for example, if I have like 3 parts of the meat, I like to add at least 1 part of cheese, if not more. You can also add beans to these. You can add rice to the inside if you're on a budget and trying to stretch meat. On this particular week, I asked my 14-year-old son to hang some clothes on the line for me.
He hung the clothes on the line, all right. He left this in the mesh bag. And
Have you ever had a situation where you ask your child to carry out an activity and you come along later and see that they totally did it all kinds of wonky wrong? I think one of the hardest lessons for me to learn as a parent, and it's one I wish I would have learned from the start, is that kids sometimes need the most detailed instructions on how to carry out a task. Sometimes with some kids, not all, but some, you really got to break it down for them. And this requires a lot of patience on the parent's part. It can also take stepping back sometimes and praying over the situation. I think one of the saddest things is thinking a kid is being difficult or obstinate when the fact is they just don't know how. They don't get it. Another thing is that, and I'm sure every parent has experienced this, you tell your child something, the next day they forget. So you tell them how to do something and they don't remember when it comes time to do it again. All right, about that, did you know that there are parts of children's brains that are still soft and not forming? The way it was explained to me by a therapist is it's called gray matter, and essentially kids don't have executive functioning skills. They don't really learn those until they're around 25. So again, patient instruction. One of my favorite verses regarding this is Proverbs 31:26. She speaks with wisdom, and faithful instruction is on her tongue. And another one that encourages me as a mother is Galatians 5:22-23. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Something I learned from a book that I read years ago from a large family mama was when you go to teach your child a new skill, do it with them the first few times. Then let them do it on their own. But when they're done, have them come report back to you so you can inspect it. Let them have post-its if they need. Eventually, they'll be able to fly on their own with the new task.
this is a dress. I guess he didn't realize he was supposed to take it out. He just hung it up there. Boys. This is what. Look at this dress. This is what it is to have sons, everybody. This is teenage sons. So look at this. I have to rewash this now. It's like so completely wrinkled. It's dry. Can't stop laughing. Oh, my stomach hurts. I don't need to do ab workouts today.
Let's take a little walk around the garden now. The garden is finally doing well. We had a crazy spring. The weather was up and down and all over the place, and this poor garden was very confused, but it is slowly pulling out of all of that. I want to show you guys this mesh screen. This is great for you organic gardeners out there. This screen keeps the moths that like to lay those little green cabbage worm things that eat your cabbage up off. And it's working. I started growing my first gardens as a teenager. When I was 16, I took on the family garden. My stepdad didn't think I could do it, but I did. And I still remember to this day how he smiled when I proved him wrong. I have been gardening ever since. Not every year, but as many as I have been able to with little babies. And now I don't have any little babies anymore. They're all growing up. So I have really been enjoying teaching them the art of gardening. My hope is that they will find it as therapeutic and as a way to have a closer walk with the Lord, like gardening has done for me. Kind of like that old hymn, In the Garden. You guys, thank you for watching till the end. If you enjoyed this, please like this video. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell for notifications.